Alexee Trevizo trial. What the is going on with it? Well, it is still pending. It's still lulling a little bit. They're still waiting for the Supreme Court decision on whether or not they're going to allow key evidence into the trial, because the judge in the district court, Judge Jane Gray Schuler, I think that's her name. I feel like I remember seeing the name every time when I look up the case. But she essentially did not allow a lot of the evidence that the state wanted in. For example, there were some body cam footages where Alexee Trevizo was making, statements that could be used against her. It was when the doctor brought in law enforcement and then let Alexee Trevizo know that, hey, we found a dead baby in the bathroom. And Alexee Trevizo blurted a bunch of statements. Her mom was there, law enforcement was there, the doctor was there. But I remember that the doctor, the law enforcement, whenever Alexee Trevizo would make more statements and the mom would go after her, I remember the doctor would step in and be like, hey, like, don't do this right now. We need to make sure that she's like, taken care of, that she's not bleeding, the placenta, she didn't deliver. We don't know if she did or not. So we need to make sure that she's okay. And then also later on, when Alexee Trevizo's mom was kind of like going at her a little bit, law enforcement stepped in and was like, hey, like, no, like, don't say anything. So I thought they did a pretty decent job there in stepping in. And, Alexee Trevizo could have kept talking on, and the mom could have gotten her to kept talking on. But we had law enforcement and the doctor stepping in. So again, we're still waiting to see if the trial is going to happen. So let's say if this evidence, all the crucial evidence, if it's not going to be used in the trial court, will the state continue to pursue their case against Alexee Trevizo? What's going to happen? So we're still waiting for all the decisions to be made. We haven't really heard much about this case, but some of these were filed. These documents were filed last year, so I haven't really read them yet when it came out. I just got a hold of some of them recently, and I figured, hey, let's read them together. So we're going to be reading the amicus curiae. If you guys remember, amicus curiae means friends of the court. So these are people or groups that they're not like a party in this case, but they do have an interest in the outcome of it. And so what they do is they ask the court, permission if they can file a brief, I guess. And these briefs are meant to possibly persuade the court to decide one way or the other. So we have the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And we also have is it UCLA? No, not UCLA. ACLU. Sorry, I get mixed up. ACLU, who are going to file their briefs basically in support of Alexee Trevizo. And then we're going to have the state's response to it. And man, when you're reading the state's response, it's there's a lot of details about this case that I sometimes forget, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot this happened. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, there was this too. And then this point I forgot about this point as well. So we're kind of just getting a refresher of things that happen in this case. And yeah, it's pretty fucking wild. It's devastating and it's super sad. But these groups are going to file their briefs, and they're basically going to argue that the doctors didn't do what was in the best of Alexee Trevizo. They got law enforcement involved, and that at least Alexee Trevizo's rights were violated, and they support. Well, I think at this point, I don't know if they had the decision of the district court of not allowing the evidence in. I don't remember the timeline for that, so maybe you guys can remind me. But man, I completely it's a whole jumble mess because it happened a while back. Thank you, Judge. I love Judge I love Justin Borowski. No, there's a video of her rolling from the bench. It was fire. Oh, if it is somewhere, can you let me know where it is? And now we can go back and we can watch it too. Fox is still racking full hearing video. They'll have it up soon. Okay, cool. Let me know when the full video is up, and yeah, we can. We'll definitely watch it together because I do want to listen to the judge's ruling. Thank you. Lauren Wilson, her mom was acting crazy. This case is insane. Feels like it would just be quietly dropped. Yeah, a lot of people are like, "What's going on? Like, what's happening here?" But yeah, things are just moving, I guess, really slowly in the Supreme Court of State of Mexico. I don't know. Because we've heard of decisions for other cases where, the defendant isn't happy with the decision that the court made. So they'll go to a higher court. And then, for example, with Corey Richards, right? She wasn't happy that the judge didn't allow it was like the way the jury polling was done or something like that, or have it moved to like a different county, or get the jury pool from like a different county or something like that. I forgot. She wasn't happy with the judge's decision, and that delayed the trial. However, when the Supreme Court made a decision, it was like done within like 3 weeks or something like that. So maybe this is just a lot more intensive in terms of reviewing it, or maybe they're really backed up or busy, or I don't know. Kind of crazy. Oh, does East Idaho News have it? Okay, cool. But man, so much time has passed because remember, when this happened, Alexee Trevizo was still a senior in high school. She graduated and then she's in college right now. And I think summertime now. So I think she should be entering her junior year of college. Wow. Time is flying by so quickly. All right, so let's start with this brief here, followed by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists memorandum brief as amicus curiae. So people pronounce it differently. Some people say amicus. I say amicus. Some people say amicus. Okay. Identity and interests of Amici curiae. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, ACOG, oh, that's easier to say, is the nation's leading group of physicians providing evidence-based obstetric, I can't pronounce this one, obstetric, Jesus. It's already a mouthful to say obstetricians, obstetric and gynecologic care. As a private and voluntary nonprofit membership organization of more than 60,000 members, ACOG strongly advocates for equitable, exceptional, and respectful care of all people in needs of obstetric and gynecology care, maintains the highest standards of clinical practice and continuing education of its members. They promote patient education. They want to increase awareness among its members and the public of changing issues facing patients, families, and the communities. They oppose medically unnecessary laws or restrictions that serve to delay or prevent care. Also, they have previously appeared as amicus curiae in jurisdictions throughout the country, and its briefs and guidelines have been cited by numerous courts as providing authoritative medical data regarding childbirth and abortion. Introduction and summary of the argument. All right, going back to May 18, 2023. Alexee Trevizo was charged with 1 count of first-degree murder, or in that alternative, child abuse resulting in death, and 1 count of tampering with evidence based on the outcome of her pregnancy. In her answer brief, Ms. Trevizo asked the court to reject the state's violation of her constitutional right against self-discrimination and the protections guaranteed to her by the physician-patient privilege. So again, remember, Gary Mitchell, her defense attorney, was talking about how because Alexee Trevizo made these statements, because her doctor was there and the statements were made, it should have been under physician-patient privilege. And the state was arguing against that, but then the court ultimately ruled for the defense, and that's why it's being brought up into the Supreme Court right now. So they're arguing it out over there. On January 27, 2023, Ms. Trevizo, unaware of her pregnancy, so again, that's being disputed whether or not she was aware of her pregnancy, presented at Artesia General Hospital with her mother, experiencing acute lower back pain and bleeding. While at the hospital, Ms. Trevizo asked to go to the bathroom. Although hospital personnel were aware that Ms. Trevizo was pregnant, she was not informed of her positive pregnancy tests. Instead, she was disconnected from intravenous medications, including morphine, and allowed to escort herself unattended down a hall to a public restroom. Now, again, another defense another thing that her defense team brought up was, well, she was on all these medications. Could these medications have caused her to just have a stillborn birth? She spent 18 months alone in the bathroom, undergoing what clinical science in the factual record indicates was likely a precipitous labor, delivering a neonate with no apparent signs of life. Again, that's being argued against the state and defense, whether or not she delivered a baby that was born, breathing, or if the baby was a stillborn. Upon discovery of the neonate in the bathroom, hospital staff began treating Ms. Trevizo as a criminal defendant rather than a patient in crisis. I think they were treating her maybe possibly as both, like they're like, oh shit, like she did something, let's call the cops. And then, we don't know if she delivered the placenta or not, and she could be bleeding a lot. We need to make sure she gets the care that she needs. Despite Ms. Trevizo's acute postpartum needs, she was detained by law enforcement officers. Now, she wasn't handcuffed or anything, but she was detained. She wasn't allowed to leave. Who remained in the room while she underwent a vaginal examination and was interrogated by the attending physician. Yeah, there was a part in the body cam where, if you guys watched the entirety of the body cam footage, there's a part where after she was told that she was detained, and the hospital, they're still doing their stuff. I think they're doing an ultrasound to make sure to see if there was like the placenta still there or what was going on in there. It was weird to me that law enforcement was still in the room while they were doing all of that. And I think at some point everyone realized, oh shit, actually this is kind of weird and it's inappropriate, and law enforcement like stepped out of the room and the nurses continued doing their thing. So I did think that was really fucking weird that the guy was like still there, the police officer. In this case, Ms. Trevizo's needs for clear information and honest, timely, and compassionate healthcare was supplanted by the interests of law enforcement with harmful consequences. When the state enforces laws and policies that criminalize people for the circumstances or outcomes of their pregnancies and deputizes medical professionals in the pursuit of their goal, it intrudes upon the sanctity of a clinician-patient relationship. So again, I understand the argument that they're making, but they are assuming that Alexee Trevizo didn't know she was pregnant, and they are also making the assumption that Alexee Trevizo gave birth to a stillborn. Again, these are facts that are being disputed. Prosecuting people for the outcomes of their pregnancies is bad public policy that runs contrary to tenets of sound medical practice, ethics, and diminishes the quality of care that patients receive. Again, the assumptions that are making, that's what's being debated. All right, guys, we can have arguments, we can have disagreements, but just be chill about it, No need to go a little bit crazy about it. And also, Alexee Trevizo, she is free right now. She's not incarcerated or anything. She's free at the moment, and she's attending college, from my understanding. A, expert consensus supports non-punitive responses to pregnancy outcomes. Major medical and public health organizations recognize that punishing pregnant people for conduct during pregnancies or adverse pregnancy outcomes, for example, miscarriages, stillbirth, or neonatal loss, is counterproductive to public and individual health. Again, that's making the assumption that Alexee Trevizo didn't do what the state alleges, right? The state is alleging that Alexee Trevizo was trying to hide her pregnancy, hide it from her family, hide it from her mom especially. And then when she went to the hospital because, the pain was probably too much for her to bear, when she went to the hospital, that she knew that she was pregnant, and that when she went to the bathroom, she, gave birth. It happened so quickly. And they are alleging that the baby did take a breath, and because it was put in a plastic trash bag that was wrapped pretty tightly, it seems, and put in the bottom of the trash bag for about 30 minutes before the baby was eventually discovered by one of the staff members, that the baby eventually suffocated to death. That was one of the findings from the autopsy reports. Now, I don't know if the autopsy, because apparently the coroner who did the autopsy testified, and there was an audio of that. We didn't get to hear it, I don't believe. I don't believe it was open to the public, because I don't remember that, actually. I remember seeing like the court arguments between the defense attorney and the state, but I don't remember hearing from any experts or any of the other health professionals. But I don't know if that audio recording was available to them when they filed these briefs. I think in one of the state's responses, I think they said it was not available to them. So I wonder if that would change their mind. While law enforcement involvement in certain cases is appropriate, it should never interfere with or take priority over a clinician's primary duty to care for the patient's well-being. I mean, again, I remember Dr. Vasquez, who was a doctor. I think she was like the doctor in the ER at the time. And she was the one who waited until law enforcement was in the room with her. And then she was like, oh, we found a dead baby, ... And that could have been, I think that was when Alexee Trevizo was blurting out all those statements. But again, when the mom was trying to interrogate her on the spot, the doctor stopped that. It was like, hey, no, like we need to figure out what's going on with her. We need to make sure that, she figure out if she delivered the placenta or not, because we need to address whether or not she'd be bleeding a lot. That's why they ultimately had her transported into a different hospital. We watched a deposition with the staff as well. And no, I don't remember the staff saying they wrapped the baby in plastic. One of the staff members said that when they discovered the baby, it seems like the plastic bag that the baby was in, that was being twisted and tied into, it seems like the bag was kind of like stuck on the baby's face. So I don't know. That could mean that maybe it was stuck because maybe the baby was like wet or something, or if the baby wasn't breathing, maybe it was like sucked in to where the face was. That's what I remember. Major medical and public health associations are in broad consensus that the threat of punitive sanctions places pregnant people in an untenable situation, forcing them to choose between risking punishment for seeking care or risking their health and their health of the pregnancy by foregoing care. Again, we talked about this before about the baby safe haven hospitals or places where you can drop off a newborn baby if you don't want to take care of it. There's hospitals, I think fire departments, and then maybe police stations as well, where you can apparently drop off your baby and no questions asked. But I don't know. I'm assuming that these teenagers, because they're, we've had heard of, teenagers doing this in safe haven states where maybe they didn't know about this. Maybe they didn't do their research. Maybe they are in so much fear of getting in trouble by their parents and being found out that they're not really thinking rationally, and they just end up just dumping the baby in the trash can instead of, going to a hospital, or, she was in a hospital, but like fire department, or what was the one that I said? Is it fire department, police station? But yeah, we don't know if Alexee Trevizo, well, one, it's still debated whether or not she knew she was pregnant or not. And then two, if there's other resources that she could have, tried to seek out to. But we do know that, because I'm assuming, I don't think, did the mom say that she was not on birth controls, or was that not mentioned? Because obviously Alexee Trevizo had enough resources to seek out getting birth control and weight loss medication. And am I making the assumption that the mom didn't get that for her, and that she got it for herself? Because remember how apparently one of the nurses in their police interview said that Alexee Trevizo did ask a weird question saying like, oh, what happens if you start taking weight loss medication and you stop taking birth control or something like that? But the nurse came to the conclusion like, well, it would make sense, if you were pregnant, you would stop taking birth controls and maybe you would start taking weight loss medication to possibly offset the weight that you might gain. I don't know. You don't remember the lady who changed a trash bag say that when she initially changed the bag, she wrapped all the trash up in the bag. So I think there were 2 layers of bags in there. So I think normally what they do is you have a trash bag, right? And at the bottom of the trash bag, you just have like the extra rolls at the bottom. So I think the way she described it was there was a trash bag that had trash in it, but underneath it was also another trash bag. That's the one where the baby was found in, where it was like twisted and tied, and it was laid at the bottom of that. But I have to go back though. That's what I remembered. B, prioritizing an immediate punitive response over clinician-patient relationship and the provision of medical care inappropriately converts the clinician into the arm of law enforcement and the emergency room into interrogation room. In this case, the prioritization of the punitive response over Ms. Trevizo's care and the state's attempt to use statements made to her healthcare team in the midst of a medical needs runs contrary to decades of established medical guidance. If the court allows the state's violation of Ms. Trevizo's constitutional rights against self-incrimination and the protections guaranteed to her by the physician-patient privilege under Rule 11504 NMRA, it will have a, I think, is that Miranda, I think? It will have a negative impact on the already dire state of maternal and fetal health by sending a message that drives more pregnant and postpartum people away from healthcare at the time when maternal and infant mortality and morbidity are on the rise. I think I remember looking this up. Yeah, I remember looking this up, but let's go into their numbers. Pregnancy and childbirth create inherent dangers and medical concerns. Unfortunately, pregnant people in the U.S. are less likely to survive pregnancy than those in high-income countries. And while maternal mortality rates are decreasing in other nations, the number of people dying due to complications from pregnancy and childbirth continues to rise in the United States. In the U.S., maternity mortality more than doubled between 2000 and 2020, increasing from 9.8 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births to nearly 24 maternal deaths. By 2021, this rate has risen to 32.9 maternal deaths. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that 1,205 women died of pregnancy complication in 2021 alone, compared to the 861 maternal deaths in 2020. I thought this was crazy. I was wondering why there would be more people dying from complications of pregnancy and childbirth. You would think that number would kind of like decrease. However, I did pull up the data that they're referencing, and maybe they just fucked up, or maybe it's just like an oversight. But so they were saying that in 2021, the deaths were slowly increasing. So from 2019, in 2018, it was 658. In 2019, it was 754. In 2020, it was 861. In 2021, it was 1,205. However, they were saying that the maternal mortality rates was increasing, but in 2022, it actually went back down. So I was wondering why they omitted this information, but I was like, oh, maybe by the time that the research came out, it wasn't available to them. But I think they just relied on this data and then just didn't check what the updated figures are, because the rate did actually went down in 2022. I don't know if we have the 2023 and 2024 numbers yet. Maybe not. I don't know. But I just thought that was interesting. Let me see what else I have highlighted. All right. In Miss Trevizo's case, actions taken by law enforcement and her care team place criminalization over care. Miss Trevizo was not informed of her positive pregnancy tests. Now, again, the defense was saying that they took a urine test and they also did a blood test of Alexee Trevizo. I think, what was the details about that again? It was like, I think the urine test just tells you if you're positive or negative, and then the blood test could possibly tell you maybe how far along you are. I don't remember. But defense was saying that, like, oh, well, the hospital had Alexee Trevizo's positive pregnancy test and they were sitting on it for, I don't know, it was like 30 minutes to an hour or something like that. And they didn't inform her. Well, I don't know if you guys ever been to the ER before, but sometimes when the labs do the results, sometimes when it gets sent over to the, hospital staff, I don't know. Hospital staff sometimes have other patients to look up, to check up on. And, you might not get the lab results immediately right away. Sometimes it might take a little bit of time, because there's other patients that they're looking into. I'm not quite sure what the delay was. We'll have to hear it in trial. But yeah, I think it was just like sitting on the computer and then no one really either checked it or didn't inform her right away or something like that. The clinician then waited to speak to Ms. Trevizo until police arrived, only telling her about the discovery of the deceased fetus or neonate once in the presence of law enforcement. Her doctor then examined and questioned Ms. Trevizo in front of law enforcement while Ms. Trevizo was being detained in the immediate postpartum period. It is clear from law enforcement and hospital staff's interactions with Ms. Trevizo that she was not handled as a patient in need of treatment, but as a suspect of wrongdoing. Like I said, I think it was both. It is reasonable to presume that law enforcement response served to deter and diminish Ms. Alexee Trevizo's ability to communicate openly with her provider in the traumatic and vulnerable moments after having given birth unexpectedly. Indeed, as a result of the intrusion of law enforcement into her hospital room, body cam footage of these interactions are now readily available to the public through the internet and social media, with countless content creators and consumers picking apart and scrutinizing Ms. Trevizo's words and actions and reactions in the most ruthless of terms. The deterring effect of this kind of response can and does have on pregnant patients is detrimental to care and abrogates the protections created by clinician-patient confidentiality. But you see, I think a lot of people who are part of the public, we can parse the difference between a person who goes into the hospital to get the care that they need, possibly being pregnant and other things like that, versus someone who goes to the hospital that might possibly know that they're pregnant, might possibly know that they didn't want their parents to know about their pregnancy, secretly give birth, and then if the child was actually alive, I think there's a difference between those two groups, right? But again, the facts are still being debated on whether or not she knew she was pregnant, and then whether or not the baby was born when she gave birth. Why? What's wrong with Mexico? Too bad this is Mexico. What's wrong with Mexico? I felt sorry for the lass that came in to clean. I know, for the staff member, she was crying. When we were listening to the police interview, I don't know, finding that's so fucking traumatic. The effort to use Ms. Trevizo's statements made in the midst of a medical event to healthcare professionals responsible for her care against her in the court is misguided and counterproductive at best. It will send a message to pregnant people in New Mexico that they can be charged for murder if they do not have a healthy pregnancy and birth. It depends on what comes out during evidence. Honestly, I feel like it could be a stretch. If she knew she was pregnant and if she gave birth to a baby that was born. Now, it could be different, right? The circumstances could be different if she didn't know she was pregnant and then she gave birth to a stillborn child. But still, discarding it in the trash and not alerting discarding the baby into the trash and not alerting the medical team is still a huge issue, because does she have medical experience? She's 19 years old. She's young. Does she have any experience at all with babies, right? How can you just assume that the baby can't be resuscitated by health professionals? I don't know. There's still a lot of like really weird, fucky stuff like that. All right, so they said that it's going to send a message to pregnant people in New Mexico that they can be charged with murder if they do not have a healthy pregnancy and birth. It criminalizes stillbirth, a prevalent pregnancy outcome. Seeking this word is going to get me all the time. Oh, sorry, I need to switch on over. Shit. Did I not switch on over this entire time? Oh, gosh. I'm sorry. Guys, I was reading this page the entire time. Should I reread it, or do you guys trust me on on me reading this? I'm so sorry, y'all. I didn't have the right page up. This is what I was reading earlier. I was continuing reading the court document. Okay. New Mexico laws are ridiculous. Oh, wait. Speaking of Hannah Gutierrez Reed, guess who got out? She's out now. She got out a couple days ago. She served her sentence and she's out and she's free as a butterfly. Ethic tells us physicians must neither conduct or directly participate in interrogation because serving as a physician interrogator undermines the physician's role as a healer. I disagree. I don't think that the doctor was either acting as a conduit or actively participating in interrogating Alexee Trevizo. I think the doctor has never experienced anything like this. Now, I don't know if the doctor was supposed to go to the the hospital legal team and say like, "Hey, we found a dead baby in the bathroom. What do I do?" I don't know if she did that. I don't know if of her own volition. She was like, "Hey, let's just call law enforcement and then let them deal with it because I don't know what the fuck to do with this. Like, this is not within my purview." Now, I kind of want to watch the video again. It's been a while since we watched the video. Because I don't know if I was just like getting gaslit from what I was reading. I was like, man, were they acting as an interrogator? Like, damn, was it really as fucked as they're saying? But I don't know. I watched it again and I was like, I don't think it's... I think they were informing her what happened. She blurted a lot of stuff. And then when the mom was trying to go after her, the hospital staff tried stopping her. And then also law enforcement later on was like, hey, like, don't do this.
So they started working her up. We did a pregnancy test on her, showed positive. She was denying that she had sex. Then she said she had to go to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom. She was in there for quite a while. We kept knocking on the door. Finally, we got her to open the door, and there was blood and shit everywhere. She was cleaning it up. Okay. So we took her back to the room, and I was afraid that she knew she was pregnant. She had done something to herself. Mm-hmm. So the doctor started doing a vaginal exam on her. We had the lady come to clean the bathroom. She put the baby in the trash can, and then she put another clean liner over the top of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when they looked in there, there was no trash in there, but it was underneath the clean bag. The baby's dead. Okay, we have him in trauma too, but.
Oh, actually, Paige, we were talking about bags earlier. I think Alexee Trevizo on the body cam said that she put it in the bag as well. But I don't know if that was when it was really hard to hear. I feel like I remember her saying that.
She killed the kid.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
How old was the baby?
I don't know. It's full term. She just had it. She had it in the bathroom. Was what happened.
Hey, bad dog.
Whatever
or
she
bad
did,
dog.
I don't know. She's gonna lie. She wouldn't tell us she's pregnant. She's been lying the whole time.
Okay.
So that's what's going on. I just pulled the doctor out of the room, so nothing's been said to the patient or the mother that's in there yet.
Okay.
I have Leela, the housekeeper. If you want to interview her.
Yeah.
Oh,
She's the one
Leela.
that kind of found.
Yeah, because I wanted to get with you guys first and then get with her to get her statement before I even did anything.
Well, I'm the charge, and this is what has happened.
Okay.
You can interview the nurse that had her.
Okay.
The two nurses that were taking care of her. You can talk to the tech, which is Lori. She's the one that went in there and actually found it because Leela's like, this is really heavy.
Okay.
So then Lori went in there, and then of course the baby was underneath the clean liner.
Okay. Yeah. If we can speak with Lori, that
Okay,
way
I'll get Lori and I'll get Leela.
So officer, the first thing though is I need to make sure that the mother, the woman.
So this is the ER doctor, by the way, Dr. Vasquez. Does anyone know when Alexee was arrested? This happened in January 2023. She was arrested in May, I think. And yes, she has been out on bond. They allowed her to attend college. Although I did hear that, I don't know if she's attending college in person or if she's doing online classes.
So officer, the first thing though is I need to make sure that the mother, the woman who delivered the baby, is medically stable. I don't know if she delivered a placenta. She's bleeding a lot. I just got her accepted to Loveless. Okay. So I need to get her up there as soon as possible.
Okay. Check this over right
Okay. So how I need to tell her what's going on, and I need to tell the mother what's going on. The mother, they're both in there together. Is one of you willing to be present for that conversation?
And I'll go in there.
Are you guys going?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go in right now and do this.
While we're doing that, I'll
And
give
then
it
I'll make sure Leela comes down, all the other nurses and stuff are here, and I'll get Leela here. Okay. But she's in the ship. Hey, Marina, will you get Leela back down here? Marina?
I'm sorry, there's Sarah, but we discovered a dead baby in the bathroom.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. It came out of me and I didn't know what to do.
Lexi, I told you about this.
But it
I just asked you, baby, to tell me the truth.
it was not crying or nothing.
What did you do to it?
Okay, stop right here.
I
Stop,
just put it
stop.
in the
Number one priority, guys. Number one priority is she just had a baby. I don't know if she's delivered the placenta. She's bleeding significantly.
Yeah.
I've spoken to the obstetrician at Loveless. They
So again, that's the doctor kind of like intervening. The mom wants to keep questioning the daughter, and doctor steps in. Is like, hey, we can't focus on that right now. We got to figure out what to do with her.
want her out there as soon as possible. I need your permission to transfer her for medicals. She needs to
She's
be.
19.
Oh, you're right.
But she is a student too.
She's
No,
still
no,
19
you're
years
you're
old.
right. You're right. She needs to. I'm sorry, I forgot she's 19.
Keep out of me.
But you need to make sure that you're safe. I need to send you to Loveless to labor and delivery. Will you please agree to that?
Yes.
Yes.
I,
Okay, great. I'm gonna work on that. In terms, I'm sorry about this, but in terms of delivering a baby and it looked like you tried to hide it, we do have to have the police involved.
and nothing was crying. It came out with nothing.
I know. But the baby's gonna have to be taken for autopsy and there'll be an investigator and everything. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but we need to do this correctly. And I wanna be transparent with you about what our steps are gonna be. Okay. Officer, do you guys need to talk to her before we get her transferred?
How long is it gonna be before you have to transfer
I
out?
don't know, are you working on,
Okay,
Marina,
So-
do you think 20-30 minutes?
Yeah, hopefully, yes.
Okay.
I got detectives on the way, so
Okay.
they're gonna be talking to her.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you guys have, I'm the charge nurse here, do you guys have any questions for me?
Like, how big is the baby?
It's full term.
What?
Nothing,
9 months?
nothing was crying.
Lexi, have you watched the news of the girls that what they do to their babies and what they go to jail?
Nothing was crying.
Who was the other girl again? It was also New Mexico, right? Wasn't her name like similar to Alexee or something like that? But she actually got convicted. She threw her baby in a dumpster.
Any other questions? Okay.
So as of right now, like I said, is we're gonna have the detectives come over here and they're gonna talk to you, okay? We have to gather some more information about what's going on. They'll get your statement, they're gonna get the doctor's statements, they're gonna get everybody's statements, okay? So I don't know everything yet, okay? So I'm not gonna tell you, I can't tell you nothing honestly, okay? All I can say is,
Gonna go to jail.
right now,
No.
well, right now, she's being detained. So she's not gonna leave from here at all, period.
Oh, actually, Meat Popsicle. Yes, I think so. What was her name again? Yeah, I think her baby did survive. She dumped her baby in the trash, and then luckily, either people were nearby and heard the baby crying, or either saw it on surveillance or something like that. But they were able to rescue the baby. I think also baby boy. Yes, Alexis Avila. Yeah, I think her baby made it out.
Okay, so one of us will
Is
be
it in
in.
your custody? Like,
Yeah, she's detained. Yeah, she's not under arrest, but she is
Okay.
detained. Okay, she's not free to leave. So while this whole thing is coming up, you're not free to leave. Okay, one of us will be in here the whole time with you, because you're not going to try to leave or nothing like that.
she
All right.
won't.
Like I said, the detectives will be here. They're going to talk to you. I mean,
Dude, her mom is pissed.
your care is of the utmost right now, okay? They're gonna do what they need to do to take care of you to make sure you get stable. They get you transferred out or whatever. Like I said, the detectives are already been notified. They're already on the way. So they're gonna come talk to you, alright? So don't leave, don't try to do nothing. One of us is always gonna be in here, in this room with you, okay? Unless we have to step out for doctor's orders or something like that, because if they need to examine you or do something with you. But other than that, like I said, You are detained. You are not free to leave at this point. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Where was the baby at?
I don't know. I have no clue yet. Like I said, I just talked to the charge nurse. We're still getting all the information right now.
Okay.
Okay. Once we get that information, like I said, the detectives, they can clue you in on everything and talk to you more about it.
Okay.
All right.
So at this point, she is being detained. Again, they're not going to put handcuffs on her or anything like that, but she's going to be detained, and law enforcement said that they're going to be in the room with her unless the doctor asks them to step out. Honestly, when they started doing the ultrasound shit, they should have asked him to step out. I don't know why he was still in there. He did eventually step out, though, at some point, but still.
Do you happen to have an ID on you, perchance?
Yes, she does.
Okay. Can we get that, please?
All right, so they're doing this for a little bit. At some point, he's like trying to get the information, the ID, and this is when the mom goes and tries to talk to Alexee again.
Yeah, to the record call. Okay, it'll be New Mexico DL, both of them, whenever you're ready.
Where did you put the baby at? Tell me the truth.
In there.
517
Where did you put the baby at?
836 460.
That came out in the toilet bag.
Yeah, it sounds like she said I put it in the bag, but I mean, again, she could have said something else.
You put it in the bag?
Yes.
In what bag?
Yeah, no, okay, it's pretty clear that she said she put it in the bag because the mom reiterates it and she says yes.
Why didn't you say anything to us? Do you want to get in trouble for this now? You could get in trouble for
Mom,
this, baby.
Mom, alright, just give it time, okay? Let me speak to the detectives whenever she's ready, okay? You ready for the second one?
Yeah, so again, earlier it was the doctor that steps in. Right now it's the law enforcement that steps in because, she keeps on talking. It's not good for her. It's a lot of incriminating statements that she's making.
Second one is 512 401 333.
Okay, I just wanted to watch that part again with you guys because it's been a while. But refresher for you guys as well. Okay, let's go back to this document and let me make sure I made the right switch and I don't fuck up again. All right, where are we at here? In this case, police were present in Mr. Trevizo's room, detaining her by their own admission. In the midst of acute postpartum care, hearing every word delivered by her provider, who waited to speak with Mr. Trevizo until they were present. Until detectives arrived, all the officers on the scene were male. Yep. And they separated Mr. Trevizo from her mother while she was bleeding, despite the provider's admission that Ms. Trevizo was in the midst of a medical crisis. I don't know if they separate. I think the mom has to step out.
Last three of that second one. The last three of the second one is 333.
Hold on. So here's another nurse. I think this is Nurse Erin, maybe?
That should be all for now. Alright.
All right, so they're doing stuff right now.
I'm going to step out. I'll be back, okay?
I mean, that's the mom saying that she's stepping out. Maybe at some point they didn't let the mom come back in, and that's what they mean by separating her. I don't know, because I know at some point the mom was in the waiting room ish area with the rest of the family members. But I mean, the mom stepped out. Mom is probably calling family and is like, "Dude, what the fuck?" They continue doing the ultrasound to see if there's anything left in there, and at some point they do bring her. They transport her via helicopter. By the way, this looks so fucking scary. Via helicopter to a different hospital. Whew, I'll be so scared to be on the helicopter ride. All right. So detectives arrive. All the officers on the scene were male. They separated Ms. Trevizo from her mother while she was bleeding, despite the provider's admission that Ms. Trevizo was still in the midst of a medical crisis. It is beyond question that the series of events inferred with the trust and confidentiality fundamental to the clinician-patient relationship, let alone Ms. Trevizo's necessary medical care. In conclusion, for the reasons set forth herein, amicus respectfully urges this court to affirm the district court's order protecting Mr. Trevizo's constitutional right against self-incrimination and preserving the physician-patient privilege. All right, let's see the state's response to this. So the state replied roughly about I think a month and a half after this. This is in December 11, 2024. State's response, and it's going to be quite scathing, I would say, of Alexee Trevizo. Introduction. The defendant was charged with murder after she gave birth in a hospital bathroom and without calling for medical assistance or immediately informing anyone, put the baby boy in a plastic bag and left him in the bathroom trash. About 30 minutes later, but before defendant told anyone that she had given birth, the baby was found by hospital staff and was soon declared dead. When a physician told the defendant that a dead baby had been found in the bathroom, defendant made spontaneous statements in the visible presence of law enforcement without any questioning or prompting by law enforcement. Defendant later moved to suppress her statements, claiming that the physician-patient privilege applied. Defendant's motion also claimed that there was a violation of her rights under Miranda v. Arizona. Here are the summary of the proceedings. The material facts in this case are largely undisputed and are set forth and detailed in the state's brief in chief and reply brief. But, the state and the defense, they're going to have different theories about what happened. The defense said that Alexee Trevizo didn't know that she was pregnant. She wasn't alerted by hospital staff that she was pregnant when they got the lab results, and that they gave her morphine and a bunch of other shit that could have caused the baby to have a stillborn, and they let her go to the bathroom by herself, unattended, and it wasn't until she came out that later on they discovered a dead baby in the bathroom, and they confronted her with law enforcement present. The state is saying that, well, we think that Alexee Trevizo did know that she was pregnant. She was scared of her mom. She was probably trying to hide the pregnancy from her mom. She gave birth in the bathroom. She tried to hide the baby from the mom, and everything else happened. It warrants observation here that an amicus party must accept the state of the evidence at the pre-trial stage. So I think this is where they address whether or not the amicus party, or I guess it'd be Amici party, because there's two parties that did file a brief, their briefs. But this is where I think they talk about whether or not the amicus parties or Amici party? How would you say it? Amicus parties, or is it Amici party? Because Amici is the plural of amicus, right? I don't fucking know. Anyways, they basically talk about how they must accept the state of the evidence at the pretrial stage. And again, at that time, there was a coroner that apparently did the report saying that the baby was not a stillborn and the baby was born alive. But later on became deceased because the baby was trapped in a trash bag and wasn't able to breathe. Go Lucky! Hello! Go Lucky, thank you so much for the reset for 29 months. Thank you so much for your support. How are you doing today? Hello. Northwest, in bathroom, hit the emergency call button in every hospital bathroom. Yes, we talked about this because we actually were able to get the actual photos of the hospital bathroom, and ding, 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 right there, it's either a button or like a drawstring that you can pull in order to get help from the staff members. I think I have it here somewhere. I might have pictures. Oh gosh. Let's see, pictures. I do have pictures of the bathroom, but it's kind of bloody. Do I have a non-bloody picture of the bathroom? What? Okay, I mean, it's not that bloody. I guess it's like after she tried to wipe it down. But do you see this string right here? There's a string right there, and I'm assuming this is a string that you can pull if you need to get help from the hospital staff members. But yeah, you can see blood being wiped. You can see drops here. You can see drops on the toilet as well. But it looks like there is a call button or a call string there. It warrants observations here that an amicus party must accept the state of the evidence at the pre-trial stage. That is a corollary of the general rule that an amicus party accepts a case on the issues as raised by parties and cannot assume the functions of a defendant. Declining to address issues argued in amicus briefs where it was not an issue raised by the parties. I can skip over this. As a result, the amicus enters his case with a pre-trial state of the evidence being sufficient to support a fact finder in potentially concluding that the victim baby was alive when placed in the trash. Specifically, at the preliminary examination hearing, that I don't think we were privy to because I don't remember hearing about this, or I don't remember hearing this testimony. The forensic pathologist from the Office of Medical Investigator, OME, testified in detail that the baby, which had no injuries or defects, died as a result of entrapment from being placed in a garbage bag in which oxygen was eventually depleted, and that the manner of death was homicide. Despite that evidence, which must be accorded due weight at this pre-trial stage, amicus refers to the defendant as having delivered a neonate with no apparent signs of life. Amicus brief 2. In doing so, amicus effectively relies only on the defendant's unsworn statement to which she may or may not ultimately testify at a trial. What do you guys think? Do you think she would? I mean, I feel like if there is a trial, she would have to testify because she would have to talk about her experience. That, hey, I didn't know I was pregnant. My back was hurting so much. I went to the hospital, and maybe I lied to the hospital staff that, you know, I've never had sex before, that I'm on my period. Or she could say that she never said that, and the hospital staff are lying, right? But she's gonna have to talk about how, you know, maybe giving birth in the bathroom and how it was a stillborn. I would expect for her to probably have to testify because a lot of it's her experience and no one else is around. The fact that the baby was later found deceased in a bathroom trash bag 30 minutes after defendant left the bathroom is not dispositive at this pre-trial stage. Accordingly, it is not appropriate to refer to the baby as having been born with no apparent signs of life, without also referencing the OME testimony, as to do so wrongly, if not naively, suggests that the defendant's version of the events is necessarily accurate as to what occurred, particularly in the bathroom in which she was the only adult present during the key time frame. That is especially true given that there has yet to be a trial in this matter. Yeah, when is that going to happen? It warrants observation that in all likelihood, defendant would not be able to feasibly seek admission of her own out-of-court unsworn statement. Absent defendant herself testifying, such a statement would constitute hearsay if defendant sought admission of such statement because it is an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, which is in that example not being offered by the party opponent. So again, saying that she's going to have to testify if she wants her statements to come in. Amicus also refers, although broadly, to a concern that the involvement of law enforcement delayed treatment or increased any danger to the defendant by interfering with her medical care. I mean, law enforcement was there, but they continued doing the ultrasound and they had her transported to the other hospital because she needed to have more specific care. Noting alleged harmful consequences and that prosecuting people for the outcomes of their pregnancies diminishes the quality of the care, 1619, referring to defendant's necessary medical care. Hey, you like my top? Oh, thank you. It's I like it too. Thank you. Has mushrooms and butterflies and bugs on it. Love it. Love it. Went on dog walk and got pressed by, outside cat. Cat was getting cute. Oh, I want a cat so bad. I love cats. I wish we can have cats here. All right. Lauren Wilson. Hey, how are you doing today? How's it going? Hello, hello. Yep, there's a lot of whys. I don't know. However, as the state has noted, the record fails to support any conclusion that the presence of police delayed or hindered any treatment of defendant, while also demonstrating that the emergency room doctor was primarily concerned with the defendant's health. Yep, and we saw it on the body cam. Finally, amicus refers to defendant being unaware of her pregnancy. Amicus brief 2. However, the record portion cited refers to defendant's denial that she was pregnant and her statements that she was on her period. Again, I would probably see her maybe testifying, saying that she didn't know that she was pregnant and that she never made such statements to the medical staff, possibly. That defendant being denied being pregnant does not foreclose a fact finder from concluding that based on the evidence, including circumstantial evidence, defendant knew she was pregnant at the time she made the statement. At this pretrial stage, defendant's denial at the time of the hospital visit that she is pregnant is not determinative of her actual or even constructive knowledge. And then also her making the statement to the nurse that we saw that came in with the, I think, not the ultrasound machine nurse, but the one who came before that with the ponytail. She was the one that told law enforcement that Alexee Trevizo was like, hey, you know, what happens if you stop taking birth control and you start taking weight loss medication or some shit like that? And the nurse was like, that's a weird one. It's a weird question. Alexee's 19. Why is the mom even back there? It's always good to have family support. Now, if Alexee didn't want the mom to be there, I don't know if she would have been strong enough to suggest that or say that, like, hey, mom, like, I don't want you in the room while they do my examination. It's possible that she just was too scared to do that. Because, yeah, you're right. She is 18 and over, and she could have just done the examination without the mom present. And then maybe at that point, she could have told, the hospital staff, like, hey, now that my mom's not here, here's the real deal. But I think it's possible that she just didn't want to say it because she didn't want to piss her off her mom, maybe. That could be a thing. One, there's no violation of the normal confidentiality between patient and physician here. Amicus stresses the importance of the normal rule of confidentiality that exists between patients and physicians. These confidentiality concerns were adequately addressed in the state's prior briefing. As discussed in that briefing, the state did not violate patient-physician confidentiality. Defendant spontaneously made incriminating statements in the presence of her mother and police officers. Amicus also notes that patients must be able to meaningfully engage with the entire medical team. While that concern is valid in a very general sense, the patient is expected to be reasonably honest with medical providers. And again, all the people that talked to law enforcement in their police interviews, a lot of them found her to be deceptive and that she was lying. Again, it was about whether or not she's had sex before, that she was a virgin, and that she was on her period, and some other stuff that I don't remember. If you guys remember, let me know. Discussing that the privilege implicitly encourages complete disclosures of symptoms and conditions, noting that complete and appropriate medical treatment depends on candid communication. Even if arguendo, for the sake of the argument, defendant was truly aware of her pregnancy prior to giving birth to a full-term baby, amicus fails to explain how she was prevented from, unable to, or simply yell for help from the hospital bathroom. Yep. I think she wanted to hide it from everyone. I think she was afraid that the hospital staff would tell her mom and her mom would find out, I guess. I don't know. The logic isn't really logicking. Had defendant simply immediately called for help upon giving birth, it is extremely unlikely, if not practically unimaginable, that the police could have been called simply because there would be no apparent crime. Now, Alexee Trevizo can testify that, I don't know, I was on a lot of medication. The medication was messing with my head. And then I gave birth and it was so traumatic because I didn't know that I was pregnant and this happened. I didn't know what I was doing. I just panicked and I know, I guess you can testify to that on the stand, but I don't know if the jury is going to be very, I don't know, if they're going to really be compassionate towards that. I think they will still roll their eyes possibly because, she was in a hospital setting and the outcome was a baby was dead in a trash can, discarded like it was nothing. But I mean, she can try to do that if she were to testify, just talk about how like all the medication just fucked her up. And then her giving birth, like, I don't know, she was traumatized. Amicus refers to the criminalization of pregnancy outcomes, adverse pregnancy outcomes, and terms such as miscarriage and stillbirth among similar phrases. The use of those terms wrongly implies that the state is prosecuting defendant for a tragic pregnancy outcome, and worse yet, suggests that Amicus was at least simply unaware at the time of the preparation of this brief of the complete state of the evidence that will be brought to bear at the trial of this matter. Although a jury has yet to resolve factual disputes, the pathologist's testimony, noted above, is clearly contrary to any claim that the baby was dead upon being born. That forensic evidence is sufficient, particularly with the hospital hallway video footage, to support a jury finding that defendant horrifically wrapped her own baby in a garbage bag in which it would be asphyxiated over the course of the next 30 minutes, despite being at a hospital in which help was otherwise only seconds away. Whew, man, opening statements and closing arguments are going to be so fucking, I don't know, it'd be so easy for the state. That's so crazy because there's just so many factors in here that just look so bad for her. And then also if they were able to show how her demeanor was when she left the bathroom, it looked so casual. It's like, hey, nothing happened. I'm just wiping my hands casually. I'm throwing my trash. I'm just going to continue walking on to the hospital room. It was a bit hair raising at how nonchalant she seemed, but that forensic evidence is sufficient, particularly with the hospital hallway video footage. I already read this. As a result, at this pre-trial stage, it is not accurate to describe this case as involving pregnancy criminalization. Defendant is being prosecuted because the forensic evidence supports a conclusion that after she gave birth to a healthy baby, defendant killed the baby by placing it in a garbage bag in which it was asphyxiated and died as a result of that entrapment. Amicus also expresses concern with the lack of trust between patients and doctors. However, as noted above, that is a red herring here because the defendant herself was clearly less than obvious with medical staff immediately upon giving birth. Amicus also asserts that medical staff should not be involved in interrogating patients. Yet, as the state noted in his brief in chief and reply brief, there was no interrogation of the defendant. The police did not interrogate the defendant. It was the mom. The mom didn't try to interrogate her. The mom tried interrogating her. The doctor stepped in. The mom tried interrogating her again. Law enforcement stepped in. Likewise, medical staff did not interrogate the defendant. In fact, law enforcement did not direct medical staff to do anything. That's right. The doctor was just like, hey, I'm going to tell her, do you mind if one of you guys were just there, present? And they're like, okay. Concluding that nothing suggests that a reasonable person would perceive the officers to be exercising any control over the medical staff, and the record actually demonstrated that officers exercised no such control, nor did the officers delay or hinder medical care. As previously noted, there is no evidence to support a conclusion that medical staff acted as agents of law enforcement. Defendant is not being prosecuted for a tragic pregnancy outcome, and there is no evidence in the record to suggest that the defendant is part of a vulnerable population. Amicus again refers to the criminalization of pregnancy outcomes. As noted, this case does not involve the criminalization of a tragic pregnancy outcome. At this pre-trial stage, it is imperative to keep in mind that were a fact finder to credit the forensic pathology's testimony, then, by definition, defendant killed her own baby. Of course, a fact finder has yet to resolve those key factual disputes. However, the repeated attempts to portray this case as involved in the state prosecuting a woman for assertedly giving birth to a stillborn are misplaced precisely because of the pre-trial status of this case at this juncture. Moreover, the subject matter of this appeal is not whether there is probable cause to arrest or prosecute the defendant. The narrow legal questions before this court are whether the district court erred when it found the defendant's spontaneous statement made before third parties are admissible under Rule 11504 NMRA. That's the Miranda, right? Yep. Are inadmissible under Miranda. As shown in the state's briefing, the district courts erred on both sides' issues. The remainder of the amicus argument focuses on allegations that marginalized populations are particularly susceptible to the lack of prenatal care. However, there is nothing in the record that would support a finding that defendant was any part of a marginalized population to begin with. Regardless, this case simply does not involve, as noted above, medical care being denied to any person, regardless of whether law enforcement was involved. Here is the conclusion by the state. Amicus raises concerns that may be salient, important, in a case involving materially different facts. However, these concerns are simply not present here. At this pre-trial stage, the salient evidence that must be kept front and center is a forensic pathologist's testimony. That testimony, if credited by a jury, would support a finding that the victim baby was alive when born and subsequently was asphyxiated in a trash bag after being placed there by the defendant and left there for at least 30 minutes until discovered by hospital staff. In fairness, the jury could possibly believe the defendant that the baby was not alive when it was born, but those remain matters for the jury. Given the forensic pathologist's testimony, it is not accurate to describe the defendant as being prosecuted for a tragic pregnancy outcome. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be really hard for Alexee Trevizo because the people that are going to be testifying against her are going to be people that work in a hospital setting. So you have the ER doctor, you have the head nurse, you have the other nurses, you have the hospital staff. These are people that you wouldn't assume that would just lie just for the sake of lying, right? So if she tries to say that, like, hey, you know, they're the ones that are lying and I actually did say this or I didn't say this, it's going to be tough for the jury to believe that. All right. Now this other brief, this one was filed by the ACLU. Now, this one, I think, did I highlight this? Because it's going to be kind of similar to the other brief that I read. However, this one does go into more in depth and talks about, oh yeah, I highlight some of this. Okay, so I'm going to read the parts that I highlight, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. Did anyone see pictures of the cheerleading outfit? Okay, so in the cheerleading outfits, it looks like she's chubby. Like possibly really chubby, like her mid-torso section. However, when she's doing the cheerleading stuff, like bending her back, like, yeah, it looks like there is definitely something there. Now, I don't know if around her mom, if she just wore really baggy clothes and the mom just like wasn't paying attention, didn't know. But based on the mom's reaction, I do believe that the mom didn't know. However, when she got to the hospital, I think she started having her suspicions. Especially when they were questioning her about, you know, maybe the pregnancy stuff. She gave the urine test. She gave the blood test. I think she started having suspicions about it. And then she tried to talk to her daughter about it. And then that's when law enforcement and the hospital the hospital staff came in. And she's like, Alexee, I told you, be honest with me. So I think it is possible that the mom didn't know as well. But a lot of people are like, no, the mom definitely knew. Like, how could you not tell that she was pregnant? But, I think it's possible she could have worn like really baggy clothes. Yeah, I think her friends probably knew. Your friends, the people that you're close with, like your cheerleading crew, like I'm sure the school, they probably knew. But anyways. All right. The ACLU of New Mexico is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to upholding individual civil rights, civil liberties, and principles of equality and liberty. The ACLU of New Mexico's interest in this case stems from its deep commitment to the rights of individuals to access confidential medical care without the interference of law enforcement. By clarifying the point at which healthcare providers involve crosses from medical care into law enforcement, the brief shows that health privacy laws, medical ethics, and criminal procedure principles support the trial court's decision to suppress Ms. Trevizo's statements. This distinction is essential to protecting individual rights and upholding public trust in the medical system. So I actually enjoyed reading this. I thought the information was pretty interesting. The trial court correctly determined the proper boundaries between law enforcement investigative work and the provision of health care in finding that Dr. Vasquez, Dr. Vasquez, the ER doctor, Dr. Vasquez crossed the line from medical provider to law enforcement agent when Ms. Trevizo made the statements at issue. Oh man, Dr. Vasquez. Dude, I think Dr. Vasquez was just really fucking shook up about what was discovered. I think she was like, she's never seen anything like this before, and she just wanted to make sure that everything was done properly. And I don't know if there's like a different hospital protocol that she was supposed to follow, or she was supposed to consult with legal first, or if she did do that and they're like, hey, get law enforcement involved. But all I saw was a very scared woman / health professional who was just trying to do the best that she can given the circumstances, the really fucked circumstances. But damn. I know that there's a lawsuit against her too also. As seen in Mr. Trevizo's case, when these two groups become intertwined in the context of medical health emergency, so again, that's law enforcement and the the hospital that's treating her. When these two groups become intertwined in the context of medical health emergency with police interrogations being conducted by health providers on medically vulnerable patients suffering from acute injuries, a medical provider's ability to provide the best care possible for patients is compromised. So again, they're saying that Alexee Trevizo, her care was compromised the moment that hospital staff contacted law enforcement and then had law enforcement present when they told her that they found a dead baby in the trash can. Things are similar when healthcare work overlaps with law enforcement investigations. Medical providers are faced with diametrically opposed obligations: the duty to keep patient information confidentiality, and the duty to inform law enforcement of patient information, and the duty to do no harm, and the duty to report to police so they can uphold their job protecting public safety. I would read the whole thing, but my throat is getting a little bit dried, and I have someone who's coming over to do our water stuff, and they're going to be banging on the pipes. Wait, quick question. It just came to my mind just now. Does banging on the pipes also have a different connotation? Or am I just like overthinking things? Her boyfriend could have went back and told the nurse the truth. I don't even know if the boyfriend even knew. I don't know. I wonder if she even tried to hide it from the boyfriend as well. Lauren says she looked pregnant, no doubt about it. Taxi also says agreed. You're Not Alone also says agree. Further, when, as here, police are able to interrogate patients who are suffering from acute injuries and medically vulnerable, the medical provider's duty to provide care and do no harm to the patient is compromised. Again, this talks about extension of problematic policing practices into the emergency department causing harm to patients. I'm going to skip over this, but it is very interesting though. All right. Medical privacy laws and medical ethics delineate the distinctions between medical care and police investigations. Such delineation exists under federal and New Mexico law, even when law mandates the cooperation of medical providers, such as when they must report certain types of suspected crimes and injuries. Yep. Health privacy laws and ethics require that their involvement is time and substance limited. Moreover, ethics must guide medical providers even as they comply with their legal obligations. Okay. Health privacy laws create distinct and discrete exceptions and procedures outlining when information relevant to criminal investigation is to be provided by healthcare providers to law enforcement. I have this part highlighted here. Contrary to the state's position, HIPAA. Oh, okay. This is when Gary Mitchell, her attorney, was arguing about HIPAA and was saying that, the patients have a right to privacy and you can't just disclose information out like that. All right. HIPAA is critical to the evaluation of the behavior of the medical providers in Mr. Trevizo's case. HIPAA informs the extent of disclosures of patient health information permitted by health privacy laws to law enforcement. I wonder if it could technically be against HIPAA because Dr. Vasquez, when she talked to law enforcement before they went to Alexee Trevizo's room, did tell law enforcement that, she gave birth and we don't know she gave birth to placenta yet. I don't know that part right there, if that information would be part of violating HIPAA, maybe. Like, I get what she was doing. She was trying to communicate to the law enforcement, like, hey, like, we don't know if she's going to deliver the placenta or not. She might be bleeding a lot and we got to transport her. But I don't know if that was like too much information to be giving to law enforcement. As both parties note, HIPAA provides instances when patient health information may be disclosed to parties. These exceptions include reports to public health authorities and relevant to the instant case, information related to potential criminal conduct. 3 exceptions contained in HIPAA are potentially applicable in the instant case. First exception, as the state notes, permits the disclosure of patient information relating to a crime that occurred on the premises of a covered entity. The provision specifies that a disclosure may be made as HIPAA exceptions are generally permissive in nature and not mandatory. See, this is why this case became even more interesting, because then they started talking about the HIPAA, the patient, physician confidentiality. And I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting because it's like, well, it's considered a crime scene, and you know, she's being accused of doing this horrific crime. Like, how does that, like, I don't know how, where are the boundaries between the boundaries between the hospital and the boundaries between like law enforcement, like kind of like being a part of that as well. Like, how do they segment that? But even in this case, it seems like they didn't really know how to, or maybe they thought they knew how to, but still, the court still decided against the state. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was like really interesting. Oh, laying pipe. Oh, is that different? Okay. Hey, Marion, how are you doing today? The provisions also limits information being disclosed to protected health information that would alert law enforcement of nature and commission of the crime, the location of the crime, the victims, and the identity and description and location of the alleged perpetrator of the crime. The second exception, highlighted by the state, falls outside the delineated exceptions contained in 45 CFR section 164 blah blah blah, and as it concerns the disclosure of patient health information of the victim of abuse, neglect, or domestic violence, which I would assume doesn't apply here. This provision does not apply to Ms. Trevizo, who is the one suspected of abuse or neglect here and not the victim of it. The third exception allows disclosure authorized by the state law, including mandatory reporting statutes. Yes, authorizing disclosure required by law, including laws that require the reporting of certain types of wounds or other physical injuries. Hence, in addition to these federal provisions, to properly evaluate the conduct of the medical team and law enforcement in this case, we must look to New Mexico laws. Applicable New Mexico law includes its provision on physician-patient privilege and confidentiality. Rule 11504 NMRA. We have NMSA, set 1978, Section 14-6-1, 2023. New Mexico law also follows other states in mandating that physicians and nurses report incidents where they have reason to suspect child abuse or neglect. Well, this is worse than that. In such instances, the statute provides that when a reporting party knows or has reasonable suspicion that a child has been abused or neglected, they shall report the matter immediately. Yeah, this was way worse. New Mexico enacted the statute when nationwide attention was focused on increasing protections for vulnerable children. Historically, these kinds of abuses were hidden from view and not commonly reported to officials. Oh, so sad. Through the imposition of mandatory reporting obligations on medical providers was not without controversy. These professionals were included as reporters because of their unique proximity to victims and their ability to uncover suspected cases of child abuse and neglect. All right, how is this going to apply to Alexee Trevizo? Once a report is made, the statute requires the recipient of the mandatory report to conduct the investigation, taking investigatory responsibility out of the hands of the reporting party. So again, that's law enforcement taking out of the responsibility of the health staff, I guess. The recipient of the report shall take immediate steps to ensure prompt investigation of the report. The investigation shall ensure that immediate steps are taken to protect the health or welfare of the alleged abused, or the neglected child. Yeah, but in this case, the child was not alive. The delineated exceptions to patient privacy and confidentiality does not authorize broad and amorphous gathering of and transmission of patient information to law enforcement. All right, talks about HIPAA again. Let's see, HIPAA. At first blush, the New Mexico statute would seem to give law enforcement access to any and all health information if the crime at issue concerns child abuse or neglect. However, such broad and amorphous permission would render inapplicable large swaths of health privacy laws and medical providers' duties of confidentiality and privacy for any patient suspected of child abuse or neglect. Rather than adopt this broad reading that would make health privacy and patient confidentiality protections largely meaningless, a thorough and contextual analysis of medical providers' legal and ethical obligations points to the opposite conclusion, namely that the exceptions to the disclosure provisions in HIPAA and mandatory reporting obligations imposed by New Mexico do not result in the wholesale production of patient information and evisceration of patient confidentiality or privacy protections. Medical providers should not wholesale disclose information to law enforcement, but only information that is necessary for law enforcement to begin their investigation. This contextualized reconciliation of the applicable laws and ethics is not just correct, it reflects a balancing of the respective goals of public safety and patient rights. I mean, law enforcement was informed by the hospital that, hey, there's a dead baby in the bathroom. She claims to have not had sex before. She claims to be a virgin, and she was in the bathroom for a little bit. And at some point, one of the staff members found a dead baby in the trash. So I think that's what that seems like medically. I don't know. That seems like necessary information for law enforcement to be given in order to begin their investigation. Maybe talking about whether or not she delivered the placenta was like a little too much. Maybe. And I don't remember what happened to the rest of it. In this case, by the time Trevizo made the statements at issue, the mandatory reporting to the police under New Mexico law had already been made, okay? The police had to arrive in response to the reporting. The reading that best comports with New Mexico law, federal and state health privacy laws, and the ethical principles governing medical providers is that the mandatory reporting requirement ended at that point. Mandatory reporting statutes are meant to help police identify when a crime has occurred and to give police relevant information that the medical provider is aware of at the time of the report. It's not meant to help police build an evidentiary case against a suspect. I don't think they were trying to do that, though, when they brought her in. Sorry, when they brought everyone in to let her know, like, hey, they found a dead baby in there. It was just like, hey, we're just going to tell you this. And then, yep, we'll just see what happens then. Yeah, I know. Time really flies. 2.5 years ago. All right. Talks about HIPAA. All right, what does it say here? Confidentially coded medical ethics opinion. The opinion provides that generally patients are entitled to decide whether and to whom their personal health information is disclosed. Yeah, so I think the argument that defense team was also making was that the hospital, I don't know if the hospital gave law enforcement maybe, I don't know. I don't know if the hospital, because I remember there was a body cam footage of one of the police officers standing near the computer. And I think they wanted information, but I don't know if the hospital just like gave information like on like Alexee Trevizo's like medical stuff to law enforcement then and there, or law enforcement applied for like a warrant. I don't remember that part, but I do remember him standing next to the computer and then he was trying to get information. But I don't know if it's just like getting general information, like her name or something like that, her contact information. But yeah, I do remember seeing that. But I think if something like that happened, they would just include it in here now. Because they have the entire body cam. All right, State v. Roper. Police officer was in an emergency room to question a defendant for driving a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol. The officer then asked the treating nurse for the defendant's blood test results, and she disclosed that information. Yeah, that seems like something that's pretty fucked up. The court found that disclosing the results of blood tests constituted a privileged communication under SCRA 11-504 and should not have been disclosed to the police officer. Yeah, it seems like in that case, he would have had to apply for a warrant in order to get that. Oof. I mean, that just seems like so different than what happened here, but the court's determination in Roper represents the exact kind of discerning necessary when determining the limits of policing in medical care situations. I mean, that I agree with. All right. Healthcare providers' disclosure and assistance beyond legal mandates transform their role from healthcare provider to agent of law enforcement and opens the door to the violation of individuals' rights. Okay. When healthcare providers go beyond legally authorized and mandated disclosures and exceptions to patient confidentiality and privacy provisions in cases involving law enforcement, they do not just run afoul of health privacy laws and ethical mandates. At that point, they are no longer providing medical care. Instead, they are providing direct assistance to police in gathering the evidence through questioning and seizure of evidence. I don't think that they were trying to do that, though. They become agents of law enforcement. In this case, as both parties agree, the report and identification of potential criminal incident was completed by the time Ms. Trevizo made the statements at issue. These statements were made by Ms. Trevizo to Dr. Vasquez, occurred after her examination, her labor, and delivery after the police arrived. Because it's not like Dr. Vasquez was like trying to elicit information out of Alexee Trevizo. It's just like, hey, this is what happened, and we had to call law enforcement. It would be different if she was like continuing to like ask questions and like, hey, like, did you give birth? Did you just throw the baby in the trash can? Did you do this? Did you do that? But she didn't do that. It was just like, hey, this is what happened. And yeah, law enforcement's here. Just letting you know, just trying to be transparent with you why law enforcement's being called. Bruce Rivers, I think he has covered maybe I feel like he has covered this before. I think so. I know. So sad to hear that he lost Michael. Super sad. I think Michael is, he's like a lot younger than me, like in his like late 20s, right? The memorial in the family home is what really gets to me, though. Oh, yeah, in the body cam footage. Hey, at least they set up a memorial for him. When healthcare providers cross the line from providing treatment to participating in law enforcement investigations, constitutional criminal procedure is the governing framework for evaluating the lawfulness of the conduct vis-a-vis the individual rights of suspects. This division between medical purpose and law enforcement can be seen in various criminal procedure doctrines, from Fourth Amendment search and seizures questions, Fifth Amendment interrogation issues, and Sixth Amendment confrontation clause and hearsay questions are adjudicated by New Mexico courts. Let's see what else we got here. All right, conclusion. The harm to Ms. Trevizo as a result of this ordeal and the public dissemination of her medical emergency cannot be undone. True. Moreover, the ramifications extend beyond Ms. Trevizo to other vulnerable individuals who read her story. Depends on what facts come out from this case. They may wonder, how private are their encounters with medical professionals? Are medical providers, in fact, working hand in hand with the police? Okay. The trial court could not turn back the clock to correct the missteps by law enforcement officers and the healthcare providers the night Ms. Trevizo entered the emergency department. But the trial court did what it was in its power and capability by imposing the consequence of suppression for the overreach of law enforcement and the medical team's shift from providing care to acting as law enforcement proxies. I don't know if I agree with that. Discerning the delineation of roles and imposing consequences when such delineation is transgressed is essential to upholding the law, ethics, and public policy concerns fundamental to protecting individuals and promoting public safety. By redressing the rights violations when lines are crossed, the trial court vindicated Ms. Trevizo's rights and provided critical future guidance to police and healthcare providers who will continue to cross paths in this intersection. So I guess, are they trying to say that, okay, alerting law enforcement, that's fine, because they have to alert law enforcement. They have to alert law enforcement if a potential crime had occurred, right? Is it the part where bringing law enforcement into the room and informing Alexee Trevizo that they found a dead baby? That's the part that they think shouldn't have happened, I guess. But where would it go from there? I guess don't bring law enforcement into the room to let her know what they found out. Just have law enforcement do their own investigation on the side and then do what they needed to do to investigate, I guess. I don't know. I just feel like this is a mistake that, if it is a mistake, it just happened in the moment, and it could just easily happen to anyone in the healthcare professional. But I don't know. Maybe she should have went to legal and be like, "Hey, this is what happened. This is what's happening. Sorry, this is what's happening, and what's the proper way to proceed." But I don't know. Maybe the legal team said, "Yeah, do this, do that. That's fine." All right, so this is going to be the state's response, and it's going to be similar to the other response, but I think there might be some new stuff in here. Let's see. So again, Alexee Trevizo was 19 at the time. She was charged with murder after she gave birth in a hospital bathroom, didn't call for medical assistance, didn't inform anyone at all. She put the baby boy in the trash bag and left him in the bathroom trash bin. 30 minutes later, Before the defendant had told anyone she'd given birth, the baby was found by hospital staff and was declared dead. And again, I remember them saying that they didn't even attempt to do any life-saving measures because the baby was so blue and it seemed like the baby had been dead for quite some time. Defendant made spontaneous statements in the visible presence of law enforcement. Again, no one questioned her or prompted her. Defendant later on moved to suppress those statements, claiming that physician-patient privilege applied, and that it was a violation under her rights of Miranda v. Arizona. And, was it August 2023? The district court granted the suppression motion from which the state has appealed. August 2023. Jeez, that's oh my God, that's a long time ago. Wow. Long time ago. All right. Factual summary of the proceedings. Again, they're going to say that it was filed timely. I think maybe this is the one that addresses whether or not the amicus party had access to the audio recordings of the medical examiner. Let's see. All right. The state wishes to emphasize several aspects. Police did not show up in the emergency room on their own accord, let alone to interrogate the patients in hope of finding a crime. Rather, they were properly called to the scene because hospital staff found a deceased baby in the trash in the hospital bathroom, which defendant had used about 30 minutes later. The police did not interrogate the defendant. Although the defendant made spontaneous statements in response to the doctor telling her that a dead baby had been found in the trash, the doctor did not reveal any private health information to the police. Nor is there any evidence to support any finding that the doctor, medical staff, acted as an agent of the police. It also warrants observation here that any party, including the amicus party, again, this was iterated in the other state's reply, says that there's a corollary of the general rule that the amicus brief must accept the case on the issue as raised by the parties and cannot assume the functions of the defendant. As a result, Amici enter this case with a pretrial state of the evidence clearly capable of supporting a fact finder in potentially concluding that the victim baby was alive when placed in the trash. Specifically, at the preliminary examination hearing, a forensic pathologist from the Office of the Medical Investigator testified in detail that the baby, which had no injuries or defects, died as a result of entrapment from being placed in a garbage bag in which the oxygen was eventually depleted, and the manner of death was homicide. Although a jury has yet to resolve factual disputes, the pathologist's testimony is clearly contrary to any claim that the baby was dead upon being born. Accordingly, the forensic evidence is sufficient, particularly with the hospital hallway video footage, to support a jury finding that the defendant horrifically wrapped her own baby in the garbage bag, which asphyxiated over the course of the next 30 minutes, despite being in hospital, which help was otherwise only seconds away. All right. So the argument here is there's no improper overlap of policing and healthcare functions in this case. District Court's ruling on a motion to suppress involves factual and legal issues. An appellate court reviews factual matters with deference to the District Court's finding if substantial evidence exists to support them, and reviews the court's application of the law de novo. So starting from scratch, I guess. Amici identify other cases in which they claim the police acted improperly in the healthcare settings. For example, in New Mexico, police have arrested and brought individuals to hospitals for invasive procedures conducted by medical providers only for no drug contraband to be found. Amici contends that Dr. Vasquez crossed the line from medical provider to law enforcement agent by the time the defendant made the statements. Amici apparently are referencing the district court's legally erroneous conclusion that the doctor, by failing to advise the defendant of her right of confidentiality pursuant to Rule 11-504 and Section 14.6-1, by failing to invoke the privilege on behalf of a patient pursuant to Rule 11-503 NMRA, and by entering only when accompanied by law enforcement. So I guess maybe the district court thinks that she should have told Alexee Trevizo without law enforcement being present. But I can see why she didn't want to, because at that point she was like, oh, this is a crime scene. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Maybe this is the right thing. However, as reported on the state's brief in chief and reply brief, there is no substantive factual support for that conclusion. So again, they are disagreeing with the district court's decision. In light of that, Amici, like defendant, fails to show that district court's related legal conclusion set forth above was sound. Man, I can't wait for the Supreme Court to make their decision. What's taking so long? I want to know what's going to happen. The state is not only aware of any authority for the proposition that a doctor must affirmably advise a patient of his or her confidentiality rights under any possibly applicable law, nor did Amici identify any. At most, the ethical guidance Amici points to states that healthcare professionals should limit the amount. Wait, why did I have to zoom in? Duh. Okay, I'm zooming this in. Oh my God, my eyes. At most, the ethical guidance Amici points to states that healthcare professionals should limit the amount of information they disclose or guard against invasive procedures. The guidance does not require the prophylactic advisements. Prophylactic, that's like preventative, right? Is that what it is? Prophylactic. Any healthcare people in there? Prophylactic advisements that the district courts thought necessary. Amici correctly note that doctors are already burdened, if not overburdened, with numerous duties. Imposing upon doctors a quasi-Miranda-like duty to affirmatively advise patients of various privacy or confidentiality rights, which may not even apply in a given case, would add a further burden not required by medical ethics or by law. Nor can Amici avoid logically and legally correct conclusion that a patient making statements in the obvious, visible presence of third persons not necessary to any medical care constitutes a valid waiver of any patient or any privilege or confidentiality. That's right. The state argued that she waived that confidentiality when she began making those statements in the presence of her mom and the presence of law enforcement. And it's not like they were undercover. They visibly were law enforcement. They had their badge. They had their uniform. Even assuming that a privilege are confidentially applied in the first place. Now, the one with her mom being there, though, I don't think it becomes automatically void if you have a family member present, because sometimes when you do seek hospital or like healthcare shit, you want your family there to support you, right? So just because someone's not the patient that's also there, I don't think that like automatically should void it. That principle has been applied in numerous contexts, regardless of specific privileges involved. Now, law enforcement, on the other hand, that's different. Hey, Kitty Cat, how are you doing today? Hello, hello. Kitty Cat says HIPAA permits disclosure to law enforcement investigation, crimes on premises, judicial proceedings, suspects of crimes, reported crimes, violent crimes, child abuse, and death investigations. All right, discussing issue of waiver of attorney-client privilege, including as possibly caused by disclosure to third parties. The third persons here were defendant's mother and 2 Artesia police officers. Finally, Amici fails to demonstrate that the doctor, even if she chose to enter only when accompanied by law enforcement, acted as an agent of law enforcement. It is obvious from the transcribed portion of the police lapel video that the doctor was concerned with the defendant's medical condition. As previously discussed, the mere fact that the doctor allowed, in her own discretion, law enforcement into the room does not entail a finding, absent other evidence which is missing here, that the doctor was acting as an agent of law enforcement. Amici also asserts thematically that while police are the only entity in our society legally authorized to use deadly force, emergency medical providers are society's healers, suggesting that any interaction between the 2 groups almost necessarily involves an improper overlap. However, that dichotomy is overly simplistic and fails to recognize true areas of overlap between police and medical providers who often responsibly interact as here while respecting their sometimes differing core missions. Law enforcement personnel perform many valuable and appropriate functions in a healthcare setting, from interviewing the victims of violent crimes, including domestic violence, to protecting medical personnel from violence. If the protection of lives is not just a medical professional value, did I read that wrong? And the protection of lives is not just a medical profession value, but is also an important police value, as even Amici admit that law enforcement is charged with protecting public safety, concluding that even an off-duty police officer is not relieved of the obligation to preserve public peace and protect the lives of the public in general. Public safety includes the safety of persons, including babies. As a result, the overly broad theme set forth by Amici that police and medical providers have diametrically opposed purposes fails to hold water when one recognizes, as reasonable people should, the often overlapping duties. Oh yeah, I think I recognize. Let me see. What's cool is you can see channel activities. Let's see. I feel like I recognize the name. As a result, the overly broad theme set forth by Amici that police and medical providers have diametrically opposed purposes fails to hold water when one recognizes, as reasonable people should, the often overlapping duties shared by police and medical personnel of saving lives and preventing harm to innocent persons. Yet, even though both police and medical providers are concerned with the value of human life, that does not mean that medical providers necessarily act as agents of law enforcement when they interact responsibility, as was done here, with due regard to their respective roles. Likewise, a doctor in the charge of an emergency room, even apart from a mandatory reporting duty, has a practical interest in finding out what happened to an innocent, otherwise apparently healthy, baby placed in a trash bin down the hall. In doing so, the doctor is not acting as an agent of law enforcement merely for having that practical, professional interest in potentially ruling out any foul play that occurred in her workplace. Amici referenced cases in which law enforcement asked medical providers to conduct searches, such as body cavity searches. Ugh. This case does not involve any body searches or any search type conduct, for that matter, performed at the request of law enforcement, nor do Amici claim otherwise. Amici also does raise broad concerns about police presence interfering with medical treatment or outright endangering patients. As the state noted, particularly in its reply brief, there is absolutely no evidence in the record to even remotely support any conclusion that the police presence in the matter delayed or hindered any treatment or endangered defendant's health. As a result, the concerns of Amici, while possibly relevant to other cases, are simply not applicable here. Gosh, lots of A words here. Finally, Amici also raises concerns of privacy of patient information. Those concerns are addressed in the next section. There was no improper interaction between medical care and police investigations. Hey, what's up, Nacho? Amici asserts in essence that defendants' privacy rights were violated because of failure to recognize what Amici referred to as distinctions between medical care and police investigations. However, defendants' privacy rights were not violated. First, it bears noting again that while no New Mexico Supreme Court case has appears to have addressed and that interpretive aspect, the Court of Appeals has held that the physician-patient privilege rule 11-504 operates in derogation of the common law and should be construed strictly. And again, they're going to talk about State v. Roper. That's where law enforcement was, I think there was a guy there who was getting medical treatment, and then they asked the medical staff to like draw blood or something, and then give the results to law enforcement. Let's see. In this matter, the privilege did not apply in the first place given the physician-patient privilege rule. As the state has noted, the express terms of Rule 11-504 properly exclude situations in which doctors have a duty to report abuse or crimes against others. Second, any possible privilege that would have applied was waived due to the obvious presence of third persons. Not reasonably necessary to further the interest to be served by the privilege. State v. Gutierrez. This was addressed in detail in the state's briefing. Amici refers to HIPAA, which has already been addressed in previous briefing. Amici concede that HIPAA does not provide any relief to a criminal defendant, even assuming arguendo that there was a HIPAA violation, which the state denies. Amici also concedes that HIPAA expressly allows disclosure of otherwise protective health information if it relates to the commission of reasonable suspicion of a crime on the premises of a covered entity, such as a hospital involved here. Amici also acknowledged the mandatory reporting law, which has been addressed in prior briefing in the matter, conceding that HIPAA allows disclosures authorized by the state mandatory reporting law, and we read that in the previous reply. Ooh, really? You had to get one of your cars towed? New battery, starter, brakes, rotor. Jesus Christ. $1,500? Damn. How old is the car? As a result, HIPAA is simply not dispositive in this matter. Amici's remaining arguments are otherwise addressed in previous briefing. In every regard, the concern by Amici that medical staff in this case gathered evidence, interrogated a patient, or helped seize evidence is misplaced, as it simply did not occur here. Those concerns may be legitimate in a very broad sense, but they are simply not salient or even supported by the record here. See, as a result, the state does not need to address the argument by Amici that a particular exception in HIPAA regarding victims does not apply to defendant, and admission by Amici that defendant was no way a victim here. Yep, we read that earlier. Amici implicitly acknowledged that the victim baby was not able to provide consent, thereby obviating any putative HIPAA requirement that the victim consent. 2015, oh, Toyota. Nice. Hopefully no other issues. All right. The case does not implicate any problematic concerns about the presence of law enforcement in emergency rooms. Sorry, guys. We're almost done. Amici suggests in essence... Oh, by the way, does anyone know if the footage, the hearing of Lori Vallow's hearing, has it been uploaded yet? Do we have the full footage? I think someone said earlier that East Idaho News was going to upload the entire hearing or something like that. Is it up yet? Amici suggests in essence that there was a widespread issue of police simply showing up at the emergency room on an ad hoc basis. However, the reality is that police have already spread thin, do not have the time or interest to randomly show up at the emergency rooms in absence of fairly compelling reason. But the Artesia police properly responded to the emergency room in the case because the dead, but otherwise apparently healthy, newborn baby was found in a trash can in the hospital room, which is out of the ordinary and certainly can cause at least a reasonable suspicion of some foul play. Medical staff did what any reasonable staff would do, and in fact what they were required to do by New Mexico law, which was to call the police. At that point, the emergency room had become a crime scene. And there were legitimate public interests at stake, as partly demonstrated by the mandatory reporting law. Amici make an unfounded assertion that the medical team shifted from providing care to acting as law enforcement agents, a premise already shown to be false. It also warrants noting that Amici, like defendant, point to no other emergency room patients who complain that their privacy or rights were violated. That is not surprising because the police were there to investigate a deceased newborn baby put into the trash can, a fact clearly tied to the defendant, and not to address theoretical crimes that were never committed at the hospital by other patients. All right, we're at the conclusion. The police acted reasonably here. The two officers went to the hospital to initiate an investigation after hospital staff reasonably called to report that a dead baby was found in the hospital bathroom trash bin. The police did not interrogate the defendant. However, the police did not request medical staff to do anything improper or illegal, and in fact, medical staff did nothing improper or illegal. Medical staff did not turn over medical records. Oh, that's what I was wondering, if they turned over medical records at that time, or did law enforcement go through the proper channels to obtain those medical records? They did not turn over medical records, interrogate the defendant, conduct any search or seizures, or take any other improper act, as the state's previous briefing correctly notes. The state continues to ask this court reverse the district court's suppression order in all respects and remand this matter for further proceedings. I don't know. We're waiting for the Supreme Court's decision. So, I mean, this was from months ago, but I figured why not cover it? Topic's pretty interesting. So yeah, that's it for Alexee Trevizo. Again, we're waiting for the Supreme Court to make their decision in regards to whether or not they are going to affirm the lower court's decision to suppress the evidence of the statements that she made with law enforcement present, and then the body cam, and then also I think Gary Mitchell also wanted to have the surveillance in the hospital to be suppressed as well. The one where it shows her going and kind of like running over, holding her butt as she's going to the bathroom, people checking up on her, and then her exiting the bathroom as well. I think he wanted to also have that suppressed, but I don't know if they also agreed on that. So we'll wait and see what happens. We'll keep an eye on it, and yeah, see if anyone else reports on this. Hey, Nicole, how are you doing today? How's it going? Hello. But we're going to hop on over to Lori Vallow and listen to the rest of her hearing. Again, her trial is going to happen next week. That's technically public space. Yeah, I remember that was the argument made by the state that although the hospital it's like a private hospital, but still it's like a public area because it's a hallway where people have access to. So I do remember that argument. All right, guys.